Hey, Apostles family, it's the beginning of the month and we have 2 new books to suggest for us. Each month we've been suggesting 2 books to partner with us as a church community to help make sense of where we are as a church, whatever season we're in, or maybe even where we are as a society. And so the 2 books that we've been suggesting is first by Mark Sayers. Several years ago, Mark Sayers wrote a book called The Disappearing Church, and it was a book explaining how Western society Western secular society has maybe impacted and led the church more than it should. And it's really helpful, real keen, but it wasn't very hopeful. And it just sort of showed kind of where we've come, and it didn't really give us a path forward. A few years later, he wrote a book called The Reappearing Church, I think 2019, and it was hopeful. It was a book that read through the lens of how the church has been impacted by our secular society, but also gave us good reason why we should be hoping for renewal and revival. It gives us good reason to hope for that. And we've said as a church, we can't produce revival. We can only put ourselves in the way of it. And I think Mark Sayers sort of partners with that really well in showing us old truths and old practices to remind ourselves of, rather than new techniques, new programs that we think will sort of get us through. No, there's old paths and old truths to remember that put us in the way of revival. And so I just want to encourage you to pick that book up, Reappearing Church, especially as we are reappearing publicly as a church community. We don't want to have just new programs and new techniques that's going to help us last. No, we want to pick up old truths. We want to pick up old pathways that are going to put us in the way of revival of God's Spirit and His work among us. So, Reappearing Church by Mark Sayers. And the second book, it's a hugely popular book. It's been made into a movie, and I imagine many people in our church have already read it. So why would I suggest it? Well, I just want to make sure that if there are people in our church who have not read it, that you would. And it's Bryan Stevenson's Just Mercy. It is a really important book that shows how our criminal justice system oftentimes works against our poor and or Black communities in our nation. And maybe it sort of opens our eyes to things that we weren't aware of, that we didn't know that was happening, that we assumed the best of some of our criminal justice systems and the people who work there. And it shows how it's a whole system that works against whole communities. That should really make us long for something new. It gives us things to pray for. It gives us a vision of what justice actually might look like. And so we've been a community that has said we don't want to be performative, merely performative in our justice. We don't just want to post something online and thinking that we've done what we ought to have done. But we want to be a people who are characterized by justice, characterized by mercy. And I think this book gives us a vision for what that might look like. So if you've only seen the movie and you haven't read the book, I want to encourage you to pick up the book. I think you'll be encouraged, but also provoked in a godly, righteous way. All right, those are those 2 books. Please pick up one of them. Read them maybe in your community group or read them with a few friends in our church community, and I think it will encourage us along the way. All right, friends, I'll see you on Sunday.